Welcome, everyone. I am Lorraine Goldbloom, and I am delighted to be here with two of my very dear friends and colleagues. I am here with Daniel Wald. Say hello, Daniel.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here.
And also Anthony Gorman.
Hi, Lorraine. Hi, Daniel. Welcome, everybody.
Yes, it's good to see you guys. It's not often we get together. It's not often we get together just to chat. You know, Anthony, you're in Ireland. You teach for Europe. Daniel, you're teaching for Australia, Southeast Asia. I'm in New York and I teach for North America. And we all teach something called Vortex Healing. But with the magic of Zoom and the internet, we have the opportunity to get together and we thought we would just share a conversation about what makes vortex healing unique and address some of the frequently asked questions that we get about how classes are structured and what it's like to be part of the community. We all do our own events. We offer online healings, we offer introductory events, but we thought that it would be a great opportunity to just share in conversation about work that we absolutely love and has made a big difference in our lives. So, in terms of the questions that we often get, probably the one that I get most often, and maybe it's the same for you guys, is really what makes vortex healing so unique? What makes it different from a lot of the stuff that's out there?
Well, I start, so what makes us unique? Well, in my view, let me say a small bit about kind of starting vortex healing as well, like meeting it in my life, So what makes it unique is that when you're meeting vortex healing, it's you're not just meeting as a system of a workshop or a healing. It's you're meeting this presence of Merlin, So it's like meeting a person for the first time. You're not meeting the person as what they're going to tell you or their story or their history. You're meeting them as a being, as their presence, as their person, and either that interests you or it doesn't interest you. So when I met Vortex Healing for the first time in 1995, and it was just on a piece of paper with a picture of Rick Wyman, who's the founder of Vortex Healing, on the piece of paper, talking about Vortex Healing. I was meeting more than just a piece of paper, and I was meeting more than just a picture of Rick, which wasn't a very good photocopy hanging on the wall. There was some sort of presence that just came from the paper that instantly attracted me. I was leaving work late, wanting to rush home, and this piece of paper just grabbed me. So there's literally a presence from the piece of paper itself that says, "Hey, look at me," And the language wasn't quite familiar to me at the time, even, divine energy healing and learn to be a healer and stuff like that. But I instantly just was attracted to it and just like wanted to go to this workshop. And I remember ringing up hoping that I would be allowed onto the workshop, and full of trepidation. And the woman on the other side of the phone says, "Yes, we will allow you to be here." Um, so that was like the first sense of the magic of it, because without knowing anything about it, there was something about it that just attracted me, and it turns out that that something is Merlin. It's this avataric presence. I didn't know what the word avatar was even, and it wasn't written on the poster about avataric presence. And that's in language I would learn later to call it that, to label it that. Um, so I went to the workshop, met Rick Wildman, who was the facilitator of the workshop and our current day founder of Vortex Healing. But he was very keen to point out in the beginning, although he'd written one or two books at that stage already about healing and how to heal, that he was not the originator of this workshop, that he didn't create it from his own mind or his own intellect, which is very fine, that this was more like a revelation, but more than a revelation. He was just being the bridge of some intelligence that was deeper than just what he had written about in his previous books. And I was kind of like really interested and intrigued in that. And he said, "We're going to be teaching this class by transmission, like in silence." Like, it just would be interesting, And it was so interesting. I was so intrigued, and he had great stories and was very engaging. And at one point in class, I was just in tears. I didn't really even know why. And people were looking at me, kind of go, "Is he okay?" My heart was being touched by the magic, which was Merlin, and my heart was just responding there with tears. Um, And as the class went on and we were all still here, nobody had left, you know, and we were practicing healing and doing healing, which I had some familiarity with. It just stayed with me. And he had some pictures with him then as well. He had a picture of Mother Mira, who's a divine avataric channel, and Mother Amma, who he was referring to as an embodied avatar, and Neem Karoli Baba, he was referring to him as an avatar. I was kind of going, who are these beings? And he was saying, well, Merlin is like that. Merlin was a being like that beings who are living today, but he lived just many years ago, around 5,500 years ago. But this is his teaching, this is his energy, this is his presence, this is what we're connecting with, this is what is bringing the tears, you might say, you know. So I remember, you know, at the end of class, we did a meditation, and in the meditation, my whole sense of self and personality just disappeared. It was just like fainting. I might have fainted, I'm not sure, you know. But when I came back, I had to sort of, like a little bit of like a Byron Katie experience, I had to reconstruct my sense of being a person. You know, I like out of the light, I re-emerged, and as I re-emerged, somebody was telling a story about this visualization they had. And actually, I had the same one before I had disappeared into the light. So the vision that they were having, and Rick was in it as well. It's like we were having a shared, there was three individual people, but we were somehow sharing in the same sort of vision of something. And I said, that's really strange. You know, what's orchestrating this for people, you know, to that level. And then when I finished workshop and went home, and I went back into the house where I once lived and still lived, I didn't know who lived there. You know, I had significantly transformed in the course of 5 days, you know. And then I met my mother, and she wasn't that pleased because she had a dream that I died. And I said, no, I'm not died. I'm actually have become more present. And I'm really here, and I hear you. But she wasn't happy. She wasn't convinced. She thought that I had doing some weird, strange workshop, and why had I died? And I said, well, I didn't die, but I do feel quite different. So that was my introduction to vortex healing. You know, Rick didn't have much written about it at that stage. Maybe 3 pages of notes we took home from class, but I could channel the energy. So one of the guys in class wasn't living not far away from me, so we would meet up for exchange healing. So by doing exchange healing, we learned more and more about it. We'd watch Star Trek do its exchange healing. You know, this was our
It
routine.
is incredibly transformative, isn't it? That
It was
foundational
incredibly,
class
yeah, yeah.
to be
And doing
met by the divine in that way is
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah. But what kept us going then was doing the healings, because he would do a healing on me and I would do a healing for him, and they would do a healing on me and do a healing for him. And I'd come in for a healing feeling really terrible. I would do a healing, and half an hour later I would kind of go, wow, I feel so much better from this. This stuff really works. So in the next class Rick did which was the foundational training again. Guess who was there? I was there. You know, Rick looked at me and said, oh, it's you again. I said, yeah, I'm back. I'm back to do this again. And it was as good again the second time around, and the third time, and the fourth. Rick got used to me. You know, I would just
And you're
learn to
still
follow.
here.
I'm still here. That was 1995, and this is now. So I'm still here. So that's my meeting with Merlin and Rick and Vortex Healing. And Daniel, over to you.
So I met Merlin in an interesting way. My story with my experience with healing and awakening started at a very, very young age, around six years old, where I had my first existential crisis. You know, what happens at the end? What happens at the end? I was way too young to verbalize or to communicate that with anybody. So on one hand, it started an amazing exploratory path of spirituality or awakening and healing and sort of trying to figure out what is all this mean? What's actually the truth of all of this? And that was amazing. But on the other hand, it also created what we would call issues. It created the first where I could track back to digestive issues and things from my my physical reaction to that created all sorts of stuff that was going on in my body, in my system, and also emotionally. You know, I grew up being very happy, pleasing people, always with a big smile, but I could also sense that there was this little gap between who I was and who I was showing myself to be. There was always this feeling like that's not quite who I am. And people would say, oh, you're a very nice boy, and you would do nice things. And on one hand, again, it's good karma, always doing good deeds and helping. But there was still something there was a gap there. There was a gap there that kept me.
And you're aware of the gap. You recognize it. That's a key
I,
thing that you are aware
I
and recognize it.
I recognize it, but I still didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how to get there. And I spent many years with going to satsangs with awakened teachers and from all around the world. And I would fly myself all around the world to sit with these people to try and sort of get into that gap. And at one point, my wife Amanda introduced me to Amma, who and I didn't have the terminology or the vocab of what an avatar is. But at that moment, I met Amma for the first time, just had a visual glimpse. Something just opened up through the gap. There was something that just came home, just knew it was home. Beyond any story, beyond of who I thought I was, who I was trying to be, even what I was trying to solve or resolve, it was just gone. It was incredible, just a miracle. A little bit later, our daughter was born, and I'll sort of make the short version of this, but um, we went to see a doctor in Amsterdam. Something was up. This doctor and also turns out was working with energy. It was a Western doctor with a stethoscope, but also with a dowsing machine. I was like, this is really cool. Um, he fixed our daughter pretty much in a day. So I said, right, I'm on the table now. Here is my digestion. Have at it. And he worked with me for a couple of months. And then at one point, he said to me, I've gone as deep as I can with you. I just can't, I could keep you coming back and back and back and invoice you, but we've gone as deep as we can. But my receptionist does something called vortex healing. And I recommend you go get a meeting with my receptionist. And the absurdity and the integrity of that moment, something opened up in my heart. I said, I need to check this out. I really need to check this out. And I went to pay my bill for the doctor, and I said, and I also have to schedule a vortex healing session with you. And the receptionist said, well, what are you talking about? You're already a healer. And in fact, you're probably going to teach this one day. And something sort of stopped. And I said, maybe, but I probably won't be ready till I'm about 70, when I've had enough life experience. And at that moment, I met Merlin for the first time because something dropped away in her and she said, that's your ego talking. It was almost like she disappeared and Merlin presented as Merlin, as magic. And within 5 minutes, I looked on and I said, oh, there's a class starting in a week. And I was like, okay, this is cool. This is cool. And just to finish off the introduction here, the first morning I arrived in class, there was that same presence. And like you, Anthony, I didn't have a resonance with the vocabulary or with the terminology. Even Merlin for me wasn't interesting as a word or as what I thought Merlin was as a sort of a concept. But that same presence, that same being at home beyond who I was trying to be, who I thought I was, it was just in that room on the very first morning. And I just knew I'm just home. That was
Nice.
it.
Yeah.
And I was done.
No
And
duality
you're
there.
still here.
I'm still here.
Well, I'm glad you're both here. That's beautiful. So you both felt called, like there was something beyond yourselves that sort of brought you to this moment, brought you to this work, brought you to this lineage. I kind of just stumbled into it, but
Something is
but
best.
before I sort of go into that, I think for me the thing that makes vortex healing so unique, that I continue to marvel at every day, is that there's a lot of interesting work about awakening out there and a lot of wonderful awakening teachers. There's a lot of wonderful healing work going on. And a lot of very gifted healers are doing miraculous things. But where the healing and the awakening come together as one thing, that is vortex healing. Because vortex healing is able to bridge that gap And it helped me to understand. I never got this. It helped me to understand that all of our issues, the things that keep us out of being present, they really keep us locked down in this experience of separation, of being a separate someone. And we can do a lot to make ourselves feel better and be a better person. But I needed something and I prayed for something to just crack the whole thing open, that I actually had to let go of the deeper pattern. And it was that deeper awakening that was calling. And that awakening kind of had to come beyond myself, or any technique or any tool. And to me, that magic, that's vortex healing, that's the thing that does that. That's the thing that called to you and brought you to class. Um, for me, I didn't get that. Even as a foundational level student, I stumbled in. I took it because a friend recommended it. It sounded cool. I'm interested in healing. I like working with bodies. I didn't have high expectations, but I always wanted to believe in magic. And I believed that magic could happen. I just didn't believe that magic could happen for me. There was something in me that was like, that's great. I believe in miracles. I'm sure, but I didn't feel that deep connection with the divine myself. I longed for it, but I didn't really feel that. But in coming through this work and experiencing this aspect of divinity that we call Merlin, because that's what Merlin is, it's a way that the unknown, the absolute, meets us in a very personal, in a very intimate way. I felt like you were saying, Anthony, I felt touched. It moved me to tears that the unknown would organize itself in such a way that it could say, I'm here, and this is my process. This is the divine's process. And you're with me on this wonderful ride, kind of thing. And then I could just relax and I started taking classes just for the fun of it. I had no ambition to be a
Yeah, it's
professional
enjoyable.
healer,
It's an
much
enjoyable
less
process. Yeah.
a teacher. It was a guilty pleasure. And so I enjoyed Rick Wyman, the founder of the lineage. I think he's entertaining. As you said, he has great stories. But then I could also feel this magic working through him and through the class. And I had no idea, like the two of you, that I'm still here, you know.
Yeah.
And I now have the pleasure and the privilege of watching that unfold through everyone else that comes
Mm.
to class and within the lineage and the people who are touched by the lineage. So, to me, that's what makes magic unique. It's the way that the awakening and the healing come together in this incredibly magical way where the divine touches us. Um,
Mm.
Thank God it found me. That's
Yeah.
all I can say.
One thing I always liked about it is that everything in vortex healing um, is it's very practical.
Mm.
I'm more like an engineering mind type of person. I like to make things like crafts and woodwork and things like that, and to do things and to see the results of what I do. And at one point in my journey, I had lots and lots of books on my bookshelf around lots of different subjects got to do with this. And one day got up and I looked at all the books and I said, I'm done with all of that. And this is all just theory. It's all just like a philosophy. I put them all in the back of the car and I brought it into the secondhand bookshop in Galway, and got rid of the vast majority of them because what I wanted to do is to have practical experience, to actually do something, and everything in vortex healing was like that. I could do something. I could see the results of what I did, and the things that Rick would describe in terms of what's going on with the energy and things like that, it wasn't the theory of it, it was the observation of it. That this is, it's like working with wood, that this is how it moves. This is how any material you work with, how it moves,
Mm.
So, that what he was talking about wasn't just the theory of life. It was like an observation of that if I get up in the morning and this is what happens, and I go for a walk and this is what the trees look like, and I'm describing this is because it's what I sense, it's what I see, it's what I feel, it's what I'm experiencing, and vortex healing had all of that.
Just to add to that, Anthony, if I may, it's wonderful to see that all sorts of people can have those same practical results. They could be seasoned healers or have psychic abilities and can really see energy and see the subtleties of the body. Or they may be somebody just stumbling in that
Yeah, which was
has a
me. I stumbled in. Yeah. Mhm.
and has a curiosity and an openness, but doesn't really feel like they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
There's just some sort of mental structure that doesn't feel like it's doing what it should be doing, but it does it, and it still gets the same results. And there's the miracle of magic in there as well, where it doesn't matter who you are or what your what you think your capabilities are, because it doesn't really matter what our capabilities are as long as there's an open heart and an open will and a sort of surrender that comes through. Everything is performed and intended and created by the divine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you're channeling the vortex energy of Merlin and the presence, it's bridging divine intelligence. So you're following what that intelligence, it's not following intelligence of what I want to do. We're following the intelligence of what it's manifesting. And
Yeah.
then you're sensing and feeling that to whatever degree for everybody, but then the results are the same for everybody. And
Mm.
I remember one example where Rick was in England, and we met this guy who was the editor of a magazine in England. And one of the demonstrations Rick liked to do with vortex healing was to do a vortex healing on a musical instrument. So he had this girl with a violin, and she played the violin. And the editor was there, and I was there just as a kind of a looker in, or I just happened to tag along as a student, and Rick did a healing on the violin, and the she played it again, and it was quite different, more beautiful and softer. So it was like a demonstration that channeling this energy is changing the quality of the musical instrument. But then the editor looked at me and I said, "What about him?" So he's one of your students. And Rick went, "Oh yeah, he is." And then he said, "We have a guitar here. Why not have him do a healing on the guitar?" And I was like, "Oh no," But oh yes, of course, why not? So they played the guitar. I did a healing on it, hoping for the best because you don't, didn't, you're just following the system of how to do it. And, yes, it was remarkably different. The editor looked and he wasn't just he had to be convinced. And he was convinced. He said, yeah, so he said the real magic wasn't that Rick could do it. The magic was that Rick could have me do it. And that's the
Mm.
whole point of vortex healing, that it's not being taught by the teacher, it's being
Mm.
taught by the divine intelligence of Merlin. He's passing
Mm.
it on by transmission. So regardless of my level of ability or not to do it, I could do it. Not because I know how to do it, because the
Right.
energy knows how to do it and does it because it's a process of transmission.
But it really is an incredible demonstration, that work done with a musical instrument, because when you think about it, a musical instrument has no bias.
Yeah.
It really is a perfect demonstration of magic. And to your point, Daniel, a lot of people worry that anyone can do it. A lot of people worry, oh, I'm not psychic enough. I don't have enough background in spiritual practice or meditation. That's not a prerequisite.
Yeah, I didn't have any
If
of that
you're
when I
meant to be there, if
Mm.
it touches you, if it piques your curiosity, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Because that is the path unfolding, the path of healing, the path of magic, and the path of awakening.
And just to add to that as well, you don't need to be a practitioner or want to be a practitioner to say, I am going to be a healer. Most of our students are on their own journey of self-discovery and awakening for themselves. For some, it's a part of their calling or part of their path to serve others, to help others on their paths. But generally speaking, people are doing it from their own self-awareness and their own healing and awakening. Some like us are curious and it's like, what's all this about? but some are also really having troubles and difficulties in their lives, either physical or emotional. We're sort of stuck or stagnant in our lives and just looking for help. Have tried many things, have tried different modalities, or something comes across their path. You know, one person, just to talk about how people um, find vortex healing, they weren't sure quite 100% whether they were going to do it or not. And the night before they were going to choose, they got a letter in their letterbox, and it was addressed to Merlin in their letterbox.
Oh,
And
Yeah.
you know, and it turned out it was their next door neighbor or someone in their street. Actually, their name was Merlin, but intelligence had the postman put it in the wrong letterbox. And there was like, there you go.
this
So
was the
anyways, I just thought I
reassurance,
would
was it?
I'd just
Yeah.
do a little anecdotal story there for you on some magic there of Merlin.
When magic finds you. A lot
Yeah.
of the people that I'm getting in my classes, this may be the same for you, they're not necessarily interested in healing, although pain is a great motivator.
Mm.
But they're drawn to the awakening element of it. But either way, very often, we become seekers from a place of trying to work with or manage our pain, be it physical pain, psychological pain, or spiritual pain, that longing to connect to the divine. That, it's hard to wake up out of contentment. Very often, that pain, that drive becomes the path for that awakening process to unfold.
Yeah,
So it
just
brings
discontent,
people to
even
work
just
like
discon.
this.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it was like it's a sense of discontent in life, even though it was quite young and I was successful in my engineering job and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But my Pandora's box was open, so all this stuff was pouring out, more stuff than should be attributed to my upbringing or childhood, even. So there's an
Mm.
awareness there that where could all this Pandora's box stuff be coming out of? I needed something to help me deal with that.
Mm.
That's why I came to things like vortex healing because I needed something to help manage that process, and vortex healing certainly did that.
So let's talk a little bit about how the foundational class works, the structure of it, and what people can expect when they join a foundational class. That's a question I get a lot. So what does that look like from someone who's new to vortex healing?
You can start, Lorraine.
Yeah, Duran, you introduced it, but you
Yeah.
should start. Yeah,
It used to be that classes were always taught in person. That's what we did. That's what we knew how
right.
to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and there's something
I
very
see where this is
beautiful.
going.
No, it's very beautiful to be able to come together and share an
Yeah.
experience. And the foundational class is 5 days. It's 5 full days. It's an intense experience. We're talking about all of these things. And what happens during those 5 days is that students receive something called a transmission. And this is a word that you used earlier, Anthony. And the transmission itself is really a way that allows the work to come through the student. It's passed on from the teacher system to the students, and it creates a focus of the divine there, a focus of Merlin in the heart. And it creates something called the vortex wheel. And that vortex wheel becomes the bridge to the tools that we use. And the tools that we use are numerous. I'll get into them in a second. But you can't really teach someone how to do vortex healing. You really just pass it on. Merlin is the real teacher. The divine is the real teacher. As facilitators, we hold space. And by the second day, the end of the second day, that vortex wheel, that transmission is solid enough in students' system that we can actually start to work with it. It takes 5 full days to integrate into the student system. But that gives us plenty of time to practice doing sessions on ourselves, doing sessions on others. Vortex healing works very effectively at a distance from the foundational level. We work with issues, physical issues, emotional issues, different kinds of issues. We work with different parts of the physical body and energy system. We work with working with the energy pathways, the meridians, the chakra system, the energetic bodies. We're a curious lineage, and we're always looking for, and this is something I admire so much about Rick Weinman, is that his curiosity, the mind of a scientist and the heart of a wizard, always exploring how our issues and our conditioning keeps us stuck and bridging awareness to how that can awaken and release. So
Mm.
from all of this work, there's this body of knowledge about energetic anatomy that comes with the practice of using the work. So it's
Mm.
very user friendly. It's not hard to use at all. It's about just being present and allowing the divine intention that is Merlin use your personal intention to do what it
Mm.
does. And so within that, there's this beautiful process of surrender and becoming a channel. And during that 5 days, we get to play with this. And as I mentioned, and I'll let you guys pick it up from here, but in the beginning, all of these classes were in person. And when the world changed, we thought, well, it's impossible to do this online because it's so dense, and the
Mhm.
tools bridge so deeply. It just can't be done. But then magic happens, right? And we found a way. Merlin found a way to be able to bridge this work
Mm.
online. So now the foundational class is taught online, which is amazing. So we have people coming together,
Mm.
in different places and different time zones from all over the world to join in this work.
And Lorraine, some of the power of that first foundational class is working through the physical system and the emotional body and some of the energetic anatomy, as you call it.
Hmm.
But it also starts to point us to the source of our conditioning. Where does the source of our stuff that ends up here or that expresses itself here, where does it come from and where does it anchor in? So from that foundational class, on those very first few days, or Merlin already starts to point to and bridge our awareness in and even release some of those deep, deep, what we call karma knots or anchors that's expressing our karmic consciousness, which are some of the fundamental anchors or sources of our conditioning. Um, and that's an incredibly powerful process to undergo as a student, especially in just 5 days. It's five very short but extremely full days. And you both mentioned before about crying in your foundational classes, or when you met. Well, the first time I cried in a foundational class was the first time I facilitated a foundational class. It was on the fifth day, and you mentioned that our energy systems support the bridging in of the healing. But on that very last day, Merlin lets go of my system. My system lets go of the class, and the class are on their own. And it's their relationship with the divine in full action. And
Yeah.
something sort of arose within me that saw the real miracle of this work, that it's got nothing to do with me. It's got nothing to do with my will or my skill. It's just my turning up and surrendering and Merlin using my system. But that was I had to visit, and I was in person, so I couldn't mute myself. There was still in-person classes. I couldn't quickly go off camera. I was just there and vulnerable with the vulnerability of the class. And it's an incredible experience to share together as a group.
It's a miracle, actually,
A
that
miracle.
all the classes, but the foundational class, to watch that come together and, the divine meet everyone in that very personal, intimate way. I agree. Beautifully said, Daniel. Gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice moment in the foundational where you become obsolete as the facilitator.
Yeah.
You say, okay, I'm not needed anymore. I was
Yeah.
fulfilling a function. That function is fulfilled, and that's it. It's the heart is beating of its own accord, and that heart is the heart of the divine. It's maintaining itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the people who are coming to classes these days, they're already ripe. These are people who, And although that's not a prerequisite, like we said, but the people who are drawn to this work are already on some kind of spiritual path, even if they don't realize it. So what can happen when that transmission goes and as they continue to ripen in that process is extraordinary. It's so fluid and so much can get done during that quality time together as a class and with the presence of Merlin doing that. It really just continues to evolve. And I think that's something I really love about this work is it's ongoing evolution as we discover new things and things get faster and then we can get into places that we couldn't get before. It really is quite extraordinary.
One thing I
Yeah.
always liked about vortex healing is that it puts everything into context in a particular way. And so this is just an analogy, but the analogy goes a little bit like this, where when I'm arriving to Merlin and vortex healing, it's like I'm a wave. I'm like a wave on the ocean, but my life is from the context of this wave. And this wave has had history, it's traveled across the ocean, it's been through all sorts of challenges and experiences. It hopes to get somewhere. And in the foundational training, Merlin flips it. And he says, it's not about the wave. It's an ocean. The ocean is experiencing itself as waves. Everybody here in this group are waves on this one ocean, but one is not the number one. There's the one, there's two. So oneness doesn't mean it's a number. The divinity has no need for numbers. So where again it's just a word, but where divinity is being the mystery, where the mystery is presenting itself as the one ocean of existence, where that one ocean of existence is being all of these waves, and all these waves are turning up and realizing that, hang on, my whole life is from the context of the wave. But life is not from the context of the wave. Life is from the context of itself, which is the one existence. And there's a sort of a turning around like that. When Merlin bridges in, he's bridging with that presence and awareness. And then with that presence and awareness, when I would go to other teachers and books and systems, including trying to pick up a book by someone like Ramana Maharshi, and I'm trying to read it and understand it, instead of my mind of my wave reading it and interpreting it incorrectly, no matter as correctly as I think I'm interpreting it, it's the interpretation of my wave. Merlin just turns it around and he shows me what it actually means. So I can pick up books by I won't mention in the video names of other teachers for now, but instead of me reading the book with my mind and my intellect, I'm reading it with Merlin as my guide, because I'm not just channeling Merlin. Merlin becomes my guide of awareness to understand something. So I can pick my favorite spiritual author of awakening and read it with the context of what Merlin brings to me. And now I kind of say, I get this. I can understand this book without reading this book, because the author of that book is coming from the same place that Merlin is coming from, and I get it. I don't even need to read the words in this book anymore. So that's something I get from Merlin all of the time. For me, Merlin is part of my ongoing calibration, that if I start to get lost in my wave, that I'm not just doing healing and awakening. Merlin keeps me on the path
Yeah.
of awareness of what is, that you're not the wave, Anthony. It's life is the ocean, and it's the ocean. It's the ocean that's being your wave. And from being your wave, things are evolving and changing and awakening, but it keeps turning around like this. That's one thing I love about Vortex, about Merlin.
I love this analogy, Anthony. We live by the ocean here, and every day I'm seeing the waves arise
Yeah,
up from the ocean, and not ever has there been one wave the same as the next. And
yeah,
it's like us. It's like us as unique creative beings,
yeah.
all as a complete different. Now, we may look or long for the perfect wave, but the wave just being what it is perfect.
And that's what surfers do, Daniel. Like you're waiting for that perfect wave to come in to catch it, but
But when it's looking from the point of from an egoic perspective or desire of what is the perfect picture of the wave, we're chasing for the rest of we're forever chasing. So there's this constant as you said, there's this constant invitation just to surrender, to fold back, dissolve back as the ocean having an experience of being this unique, divinely creative wave.
It's funny you're saying that. As just before I came online with you guys, I was watching Battlestar Galactica, and I was up to the final season, and finally they're on the way to Earth, on the way to Earth, on the way to Earth. They find Earth finally, and Earth is dead. Because they're coming back from colonies that had gone out into space. They arrive back to Earth and it's been nuked, so the planet has died. There's nowhere to live there. But the video camera is constantly on the ocean and the waves, and I'm there looking at the waves look great. They're alive. They look wonderful. This planet looks fine. Now they all have to pack their bags and leave again. And I haven't got to the end of the season yet, so I don't know what the final punchline is. But that was the part I was looking at, the waves coming in. They looked absolutely fine. They were untouched by all of this. It's still love, it's still bliss, it's still freedom.
Yeah. It's
Nice.
a beautiful analogy. But speaking to, you use the language ongoing invitation. Um, there are a lot of classes in vortex healing. I think it's important to make the point that the foundational class does stand on its own.
Absolutely.
Everything that I
Mm.
mentioned earlier, the ability to channel on yourself and on others and at a distance, that is, complete unto itself. But if you're like us and you feel the calling, um, there are many classes that you can take at your own pace, whatever works for you in your life and what feels an integrity to you. And it's incredible to see how, as we go through these classes, it's not just about getting more tools, but this ripening process, this awakening process,
Mm.
continues and deepens. What's extraordinary to me is to how people completely transform as they go through the process.
Mm.
We're working on a certain level to work with our issues, meet our pain, do all that. But the deeper process of the divine carrying us through, um, seeing that space that arises in the system, that sort of carries through the lineage.
And
And so, depending on your
seeing how people
interest,
change. Yeah.
you can
Mm.
continue to take classes and do the work as it feels right for you.
Yeah, and as one continues to, if one goes down the path of taking more classes, the bridging deepens and it sort of widens through our experience of
Yes, it
divinity.
does. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
And and with that, and on top of that, our energy system evolves and strengthens so that we can handle that bridging, that we can function and use whatever is becomes more available in terms of qualities of magic, depths of magic, different essences of magic that we can, as I think Lorraine said, target various places where conditioning shows up. Whether it shows up deeper in our karmic body or at some point within our lineage, we can start to target our genetics, our ancestral conditioning. How does it show up in our ancestral expression of this body, of my genes? Um, so it's very, very cool stuff until at one point, as you said, there's enough evolution, there's enough strength, there's enough light coming through that something becomes permanent. Something becomes permanent through the heart, where this identity from, let's say, from the mind to the heart of I am just goes away. It
Yeah.
just wakes up.
Yeah.
It's an incredible and miraculous process that happens.
And the,
Um,
the progression of classes isn't just the progression of the healing technique part of vortex healing, but it's the
yeah.
progression of the establishing of that foundation and the bridging of that through the whole energy system and
Mm,
consciousness until you're realizing more and more exactly that. Yeah.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah, on one level, we do the work, we identify with our issues, which is one thing that makes them so challenging to work with.
mm,
I am angry, I am sad, I am lonely. We experience our issues as part of ourselves. And in a way, the tools in vortex healing target the angry, sad, lonely. But the
mm.
deeper work is actually targeting that I am that holds it all together. And at some point through grace, that lets go,
Yeah.
and that is the deeper awakening that this work is about. The real draw is coming home to that which is already in the system. It's something we already know. It's something that you don't need a class or a tool to get to. But our issues cloud our experience of that. And
Mm.
so when that reveals itself, and Rick would describe that initial awakening movement as the loss of the core veil, um, another miracle of this
Mm.
lineage. What can I say? It's just another magic, that sort of plays through, deepens, and embodies as we continue our work.
And it's
Mm.
grace. It's the word grace is a hard word to describe exactly what it means, but Merlin
Mm.
bridges the grace of life, the grace of existence, the opportunity to awaken. It's like the germination of a seed. You could say requires grace. Scientifically, you might say it requires the right conditions of nature for that seed. The seed can lie buried in the ground, for a long time until the conditions are right, and then it germinates. And Merlin
Mm.
really bridges that, I think. He bridges
Mm.
that germinating quality for the seed of life to blossom and awaken to its true nature.
Mm.
I'm not the character of the story, and I'm not the story. I'm
Mm.
partly the appreciation of the story from a different context, but more than that, there's a falling away of that isolated self that's hidden within all of that.
Mm.
The point of view of being the wave rather than the awareness of being the ocean. I'm not going to answer the next part, but just to put it out there, Daniel, you can answer it if you want. One of the things I loved about vortex healing is how it explains the distinction. It's like a yoga sutra from Patanjali. It's my favorite one, and the distinction between awareness and consciousness.
Mm.
Because you can read a lot of spiritual books that talks about consciousness, but for us, there's a big distinction between consciousness
Mm.
and awakening that brings awareness to the center.
Mm. Consciousness manifested as awareness being aware of itself as consciousness. And in that process of being aware of itself, it's having an experience. There's an
Hmm.
experience had where you could say divinity as awareness recognizes itself as awareness, and all of a sudden now there's a reflection. There's a reflection of I am. And in that process, as far as I see it at least, something is manifested. There's creation. Something is created as consciousness.
As consciousness.
As consciousness.
Yeah.
And then it unfolds from there. Within that reflection, in order for divinity to have that experience of itself, it needs to create itself as a separate.
This consciousness is what's unfolding, but awareness is.
Awareness is always there. It's permanent. It's without, it's not part of the unfolding of the story. It's just there. It always was there. It's the quality of the divine to know it's having an experience as consciousness. And at the same time, you could also say it's part of the manifestation of consciousness.
Well, it is all divine play, isn't it?
I hear you.
For whatever reason, the divine wants to have an experience of separation, which
Mm.
it does through us as us,
Mm.
right? Consciousness is a tool for that experience, but it's the awareness that sort of carries it home, that awareness that sort of brings it beyond. And for whatever reason, the divine seems to want to bring itself home. And awakening, and therefore awakening happens
And
through
and
us,
and
and
and and,
we get to
and
enjoy that ride.
awareness is also the heart within all of that consciousness.
Mm.
Without awareness being the heart within all that consciousness, consciousness is just the sense of being separate.
Mm.
So there's a big difference between awareness and consciousness. So often when I'm reading books by a lot of people who are awake and talking about awakening, but when they're using the word consciousness, sometimes they're using it in a different context like that. The one thing I love about Merlin and Enric, they've got real clarity of language.
Mm.
Mhm.
What's what?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's hard, working with students all over the world to have that that
Mm,
clarity of language. I do think just one point we wanted to make is that vortex healing is not just about the classes that we go through, or even the process of going through the classes, but this incredible international community comes together in many
mm,
different ways.
mm.
I know, Anthony, you have the Yantra Friday
Yeah, a lot
work
of
that you
Fridays
do, which is
I'll host a
incredible.
coming together. Yeah, a coming together as a community, but a coming together as a service to use the energies and healing tools of Merlin to try to make a contribution to the global evolution, to the evolution of the overall group of human consciousness. Because like doing the laundry, I can do my own laundry, but I can also help my neighbors do their laundry. So it's a little bit like this. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's like using what Merlin has offered us. When you come together as a group, there's a power of coming together as a group, and there's a greater bridging of Merlin. We often also hold earth shifts as a Merlin lineage, where the whole purpose of it is like lightning needs a place to land, into life, into space and time. So we'll often hold events where the lightning of divine intention can land into the global psyche in order to make a shift, a transition. And they're very profound and a very important part of our contribution to be able to do that. Lorraine, you hold lots of events.
Yeah, yeah, we do. And I know, Daniel, you do events as well. Some are, open, some are specifically for the community, the Vortex Healing community. Others are open to everyone so that people can have a direct experience of Vortex Healing if they're
Mm.
curious and want to learn more about it. We all, I know that each of us try to make ourselves available as facilitators so that people who are curious can be touched directly in the way that we talk about. And hopefully this discussion that we're having will, help give people a better sense of the work that we do and that we're fortunate enough to be a part of.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about the Yantra Friday is apart from the savor that and the power of coming together as a group, there's this sense of community, but not from a personality pull that I need to be there from a personality point of view, but there is an invitation of coming together as heart. There's this feeling of heart that people enjoy to come just for that hour a week or hour and a half a week, just to sit in that place of heart as community, as satsang. It's extremely, extremely powerful and a wonderful service. Um, in Australia and Asia, the timings are a little bit difficult from in terms of the physical clock. They're often at
Yeah.
3 a.m. in the morning or so.
Physics of a planet, yeah.
It's just the realities of being where we are. So once a week, I hold a getting together for people in the region here, where we do group work, but we also share our ongoing experience, and we do a group healing for the group as well. Vortex healing has been around for, I think it's over 30 years now around the world, but it's still quite fresh in this part of the world. So it's an important part of building that coming together of hearts in this part of the world. And Lorraine, as you mentioned, for public events, once a month I open it up for the public as well, especially for people in Australia and Asia that don't know what Vortex is. And people come together and I will do a healing and talk about what's going on in their systems or what's happening through the group to give them not a PowerPoint presentation or a mental perspective of what Vortex is, but an experiential and very practical experience. And so I put that on once a month for people just to come and receive healing and what's all this about?
Nice.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think people really appreciate that. Galen and I do an ongoing healing series called Galen Carroll is one of our teachers, and we collaborate on this series called Call to Freedom, which is open to everyone. And we sort of invite people to break down some of these terms, what does awakening really mean? What does bliss? What is magic? And we invite people to kind of do a guided meditation for that and a discussion as well as offer a healing. And it's open to everyone. So it's a wonderful experience of vortex healing. but also a demonstration of this incredible community that we have, which I'm incredibly grateful for, every day, the people who come and we get to share this experience with.
All of us do 2 or 3 or 4, it depends on different years, foundational
Mm.
trainings per year, spread out sort of
Yeah.
even throughout the
Yeah.
year. So I presume you'll be putting up the website on the thing.
Different teachers have different websites because we do individual events and all of that. But if you want to see the complete picture of what's going
Yeah,
on, you
yeah.
can go to vortexhealing.org and get more information there.
So foundational trainings coming up very soon.
Yes.
Do. We do.
We should do this more
Um,
often. It's fun.
I was
Yes.
just going to say we
Nice to
should get
hang out.
together more often. This was great. So thank you guys, and thank you all for joining
Lorraine.
us in this chat. And I hope you
Love to
enjoy the
everybody.
magic.
Lots
Love
of
to
love.
everybody who's watching and see you
Take
around.
care, everyone.